good afternoon, good evening. I see that we have people here from the Netherlands, Algeria, United States, South Korea, Ukraine, India, and Canada. So welcome to all. Thank you once again to be part of this webinar. Before we start, I would like to for you to write on the chat box a bit more about yourselves. What kind of job do you have? If you are a soccer analyst, a soccer performance analyst, a soccer coach, just please write it on the chat box so we can have a bit more information about yourselves. In the meanwhile, today we are here to deliver a webinar called Using GPS to Build Your Training Program. So we will explain how can you use GPS systems to help you set up your weekly training program. For that, we have here with us Kevin Wijmer, applied sports scientist at JOHAN Sports, former youth academy player of Feyenoord, currently active as a football player, I believe so, at the second highest amateur level in Netherlands. He's a sports scientist with more than 3 years of experience with coaches and assistant coaches to translate GPS data to the training field. Kevin, in partnership with the JOHAN Sports, we have already available a course, an online course called How to Use GPS to Improve Soccer Performance. As I said, produced it in partnership with JOHAN Sports. And for you exclusively, we'll be offering a 25% discount. If you buy the course in the next 24 hours, you will have to use the coupon code that I will introduce in the chat box in a few minutes. So take advantage of this special offer and go and visit the course. The course is very detailed. I believe that Kevin did a wonderful job in this course, so I'm very happy with it. Before we start, once again, we have here some information about our audience. We have a football fitness coach. Felipe de Paula is a Brazilian, but now he's working in South Korea. Welcome, Philippe. Elliot Leonard is a former college assistant coach, currently head of business development in the USA at Soccer Lab. Welcome. Welcome, Andri is a scout. Pavan Munda is from India. Sebastian, he worked in the first division soccer in Argentina. Now in basketball national team of China. Okay, Sebastian, wonderful. And also Bunkar, it's a fitness and soccer coach. So as I said, we'll have about 20 minutes with Kevin. The idea is to Kevin to deliver the content, but also for you to have the opportunity to interact with him, asking questions. So don't be shy. Introduce the questions that you want on the chat box. I will read it after Kevin's presentation. So enjoy. Kevin, thank you once again for being with us. Thank you for your time. Thank you also to JOHAN Sports for this wonderful cooperation. I believe that's been wonderful. So Kevin, thank you once again. And now I'm going to leave you with our audience and see you in a few minutes, Kevin.
Yes. Okay, well, thank you for the introduction. As Ricardo said, I'm an applied sports scientist working at JOHAN Sports, based in the Netherlands, where I have the privilege of working with a lot of clubs and a lot of coaches and a lot of people from medical staff, physical staff, as well as technical directors of clubs, and guiding them in their journey of using GPS technology, mostly in soccer, which is very popular in the Netherlands and Europe, of course. And in collaboration with Soccer Hub, we delivered the content of how to use the basic concepts of the GPS technology and transfer that into your training program to optimally prepare your players. So I've gathered some of the pinpoints of the content of the online course, which I will go through right now. So yeah, let's get to it. So as you can see right now, I'm sharing my screen and showing you some slides of how to use the GPS to build your training program. And the most beneficial part of the GPS technology is that you can objectify your training methods. And like I said, I would like to go over some of the content I discussed in the online course. And well, the basic step is how to use all the GPS data and transfer them from your day-to-day progress into your analysis as well. Well, because of a big advantage of using GPS monitoring is that you can quantify your training program on a very specific level of detail. So instead of just checking the numbers of sessions, so the amount of sessions you do during a week or a month, and the amount of matches you have, or for, let's say, the time spent on the pitch, you can get insights with using the GPS. You can get insight in factors like covering the distances. How many sprints do your players do? The number of accelerations, the explosive actions, the decelerations, all that kind of factors that are really closely linked to soccer performance can give you the information by using the GPS technology. So the key factor is always using GPS linked from your training program is by starting monitoring your matches. So this sounds very logical and intuitive because in the end, the match is what you're training for. Every coach knows this, but unfortunately what we see in practice is that many coaches do not correctly transfer the match demands to their training program. So they will train too heavy, or most often what we see is they train too light. And by match demands, we mean the activity that is asked of the player in the match. So the match requires a peak performance. That is what you train for. So your training program must prepare your players for their match demands to enable them to reach that peak performance. So if your training program is built correctly, your match peak performance will increase accordingly. And if your training program is insufficiently built, peak performance will deteriorate, which will eventually have negative effects on your training program as well. So this is like a two-way street. Your training methods, they influence your match performance, and it's the other way around as well, that your match performance also influence your training program. So what we advise to do when starting with GPS is start with monitoring your matches. We give the general advice is to measure about 4 matches and to conclude an average match load of that. So you can provide yourself with valuable information on the behavior of your player during the matches. So you can measure how many sprints they do, how much distance they run, all that kind of stuff. So by doing this, you can give yourself sufficient tools on how to optimally prepare your players in your training to increase eventually their peak performance. So let's say you find in a match that your players do a lot of sprinting. So you have to make sure to include enough sprinting in your training sessions as well. But then you can ask, are more sprints always better? Do I always need to increase the number of sprints? No, not always. And that's the other important advantage of using GPS technology. By knowing the exact number of the amount of sprints players do in a match, you can prevent overloading your players in your training schedule. So you don't expose them to too many sprints. So, like I said, what we advise is to start with monitoring about 4 matches to get a fairly reliable average, because matches are never exactly the same. They are also linked to the score, the behavior, the weather conditions, for example, the opponent, tactics. That kind of factors are also really important when looking at match demands. So about 4 matches will give you a fairly reliable value. And you can do this for several variables. I've given you a couple of examples about total distance. So let's say after 4 matches, you get an average match load of about 9.5 kilometers of total distance covered, and 580 meters of high-speed running, which is the distance covered above a speed of 20 kilometers an hour. And let's say about 150 accelerations. So once we have this information, we can use this to base our training load on, and we can build our training program. So now we can start thinking of how to reach these demands for optimal preparation. So popular exercises to do this and to reach the load and increase the load is through sprint exercises, just running exercises, or small-sided games, or large-sided games. And for now, we can look into the characteristics of the sided games, because they are very popular in soccer, and they have a lot of match-specific characteristics. So when we look at large-sided games and small-sided games, while being similar, they are also very different at the same time. And looking at GPS data we got from these accelerations is that when we look at small-sided games, like 5 versus 5 games, is that accelerations are really apparent. They are apparent in high numbers and almost double of match demands. And you can see in the graph, the green horizontal line represents the match demands. So you can see on the right graph for the accelerations is that in the small-sided games on a 5 versus 5, it is almost double of the match demands. When you look at the left graph at the sprint distance, so the distance covered above the 20 kilometers an hour, is that they are almost absent. And that is mostly because small-sided games, they are characterized by a small surface, so players have almost no space to move and no excess space to really get up to speed. So they won't have that high-speed running exposure and stimulus. So once you are increasing the size, so increase the number of players, increase the surface that the exercise can be played on, so your transition shifts toward the large-sided games, is that we see a steep increase in the high-speed running in sprint distances. And while we see a decrease in the accelerations, so the amount of explosive actions, they are still above match demands. So in short, we can conclude that the 10 versus 10 large-sided games are very match specific. Well, that is very intuitive, of course, that's logically. But the easy conclusion is therefore to say that it is best to only train with large-sided games, like the 10 versus 10. Well, that's not always the case. You always want to focus on specific aspects of the game, like defending or attacking according to certain tactics, and practice these in specific exercises. That's no problem, but doing all these specific exercises also places a load on the players, which prevents or limits the amount of time and the amount of space you can do the large-sided games. And one other factor for building your training program and focusing on is what your own focus is of the session. I can imagine that you don't want to do a large-sided game or every single exercise every day in every training session. There are specific exercises and specific focus related, like recovery sessions after high training load sessions or after match sessions. Preparatory sessions like the tactical exercises, or you can have your high-load training session that mimics the match demands. And as well, you have your daily workflow at the club. Of course, every club has its own culture, has its own way of working. So there are specific days that the players get off. They have some free time. There are specific tapering strategies. And there is also the aspect of planning ahead that, for example, we can have 2 matches in 1 week in 14 days time. So those are all factors that you need to take into account when building your training program. So it's not always the case that you can do the large-sided games every day of the week. So the different focus takes different approach and different planning. So we can look at a week cycle here. What we see here is on the left and on the far right side are the matches, the match days, and the gray columns in the middle are the match sessions. And what we see is that on the match day -4, we see a high training load. And that is usually the training that mimics the match demands. So there you can do your small-sided games, your large-sided games, and really try to achieve the match load for all your players. And in the surrounding days, so the match day +1, +2, and the 2 days before the match, you really cut back on the load just to enable recovery for your players, so they have sufficient recovery, and they can also keep their week-to-week cycle and enable them to increase their peak performance in the weekends on the match day. And this is what we also see in research, and I have an example right here. We have the Portuguese researcher Clemente, where we do a lot of research with, is that we also see that on the specific days of the week, we see a decrease towards the match day. And usually the highest loads and intensities are exposed on match day -5. So it is a fairly regular pattern of about 3 to 4 days when the next high load session will be applied to the players. And what we see is also the match day -2 and -1 are also decreased in training load to ensure optimal recovery and to increase the fitness and reduce the fatigue levels as much as possible, so we have the players as fit and fresh as possible on the match day. But this is regarding the training load and the volumes. And what we see in the next graph here is that the intensity, so the pace of the training session, stays fairly similar. So what we see is that the training quality, the training pace, remains the same across the week. Only the training load decreases. So what it means in a simple example is that when doing a small-sided game, is that on match day -5, for example, when you have a high load session, you do 6 small-sided games for 6 minutes, just an example. And on match day -2 or -1, you have the same small-sided games, but you won't do 6 repetitions of it. You only do 2 or 3. So the intensity remains the same, but the volume is reduced. So the players do have that quality of training, but they are enabled to optimally recover and ensure their fitness levels towards the match. And when we try to look over a longer period of time, we can check for longer weeks. So there is a very popular periodization schedule in the Netherlands that is used by a lot of coaches to plan their training schedule over several weeks. And this is the schedule of Verheijen, which is very easy to use because it is simple, and it gives coaches specific tools, which exercises to use and how to build up the training load over the several weeks. However, there are some drawbacks that we must keep in mind when using this periodization structure, and that is that it focuses on a 6-week block periodization, and the focus shifts from large surface to small surface over the course of weeks. So the focus is on 11 versus 11 or 10 versus 10 towards 5 versus 5 or 4 versus 4. And every 2 weeks there is a transition towards a smaller surface, and after the 6-week cycle, the entire cycle starts again. Only the load and the duration will be increased slightly, which will eventually increase the load. The thing is with this periodization schedule is that it is not related to match load. There is a certain level that you start with, and then you go from week to week and from cycle to cycle. And what in the graph, what you see right now is that according to the explosive actions and the accelerations, is that they are fairly similar over the course of the weeks. But because the transition is from the large-sided games towards the small-sided games, is that the high-speed runs, they deteriorate over the course of the weeks. So eventually, in week 5 or 6, the high-speed running stimulus that players still need to be able to perform in their match are not really focused on in their training program. And this is what immediately shows another benefit of using GPS, is that you're able to check whether you're still on the right course using your training program. So if you see patterns like this showing up in your data, in your GPS numbers, is that you have to adjust your training program. And this is basically the take-home message, is that you can use the GPS as a tool to adjust your training program. And that's what I want to end with for tonight, is that the take-home message is just GPS is a tool. It's not the entire solution. And it's just focusing on one small aspect of the game. And there are a lot of factors influencing the outcome and the physical aspect and mental and whatever you can name of the game. So remember that GPS is a tool. It is a very powerful tool. It gives you a lot of information, but it doesn't give you all the answers. So this is what I wanted to discuss tonight in short. If you want to know more, if you're interested, sign up for the online course, what Ricardo will tell you about some more. And I think we can have time for some questions right now.
Okay, guys. So we're back. I'm back. I would like to have some questions from you guys. Kevin, can you hear me, right?
Yes, I can hear you.
Perfect. So while you think about the questions you will write to Kevin, I'd like to present the online course that I told you about, how to use GPS to improve soccer performance. You can find the link to the course in the chat box. So as I said, we have a special discount, a 25% discount. You just have to add the course to the cart, and then in the cart page, you have to introduce the coupon code that I told you about, okay? So the coupon code is GPS25, and as you will see, when you introduce this coupon code over here, you will have the special discount GPS25. You will apply the coupon, and then we'll have access to this specific discount, okay? Then you just have to go to checkout and continue to buy the course, okay? So just to give you a quick peek on the course, you will find some lessons open. The first 2 lessons, I believe, that are opened. So over here, you will find the information about the course. As you know, when you buy the course, you have instant access to it. So you can watch it right away. You will have also a certificate when you finish the course. You have the information about the instruction, and finally the curriculum, where you find all the items of the course. If you buy the course, you will go to the learning platform, as you will see here. In the meanwhile, don't forget to ask questions, okay? Introduce it on the chat box. So the structure of the course, it's on your left side with all items, and the way of working the course is always the same. You will find here a video player. You will click on play to start this specific lesson, and then you will have Kevin explaining you all the details about this course, okay? So you will find both information presented by Kevin and also texts and a lot of information like graphs and videos. So you will find all of this in the course. So don't hesitate, go and visit the course. And now I would like to have some questions to Kevin. I see that we have Stratos writing something. I hope that we have many questions because it's a great opportunity to interact here with an expert in these specific issues. And it's a complex issue, as you know, so it's a great opportunity to interact with Kevin and ask some questions. So I'm waiting for the first question. So please, we have here George Diaz also writing something. So I hope it's a question so I can address it to Kevin. Just a second to see if we get some questions to Kevin, because this is the point of having this kind of live webinars. So Stratos is asking to Kevin, does the GPS measures other features like heart rate and what the athlete consumes when he runs? Kevin.
Well, in short, the heart rate is a different variable that is not directly measured through GPS, but it is a very valuable addition to GPS. As I explained in the course as well, is that the GPS is mostly related to the external variables that are related to the activity. But the heart rate gives you insight into the response, the physiological response of the player to that activity that he performs. And what we have at JOHAN Sports here, we provide a system as well and GPS sensors that are synchronizable and linked, able to be synchronized with heart rate sensors that are on the market. We also are currently developing a new version, a new technology that the GPS sensor will be the same as a heart rate sensor. Instead of GPS and a heart rate sensor will be in one device. So you have your GPS and your heart rate data immediately available in your screen. So
okay.
They are available together. Yeah.
Okay, Kevin, thank you. We have here some satisfied customers like Jorge Diaz. Jorge Diaz is coach at Gil Vicente. I believe that they work with JOHAN Sports.
Yes, we work with you. Yes.
You say they already did the course and it's very useful. Thank you, Jorge. Victor also, thank you, Kevin. I took the course. I believe Victor is in Canada, so maybe you can take JOHAN Sports to Canada also. So Victor took the course and enjoyed it and enjoyed the content. And he's saying, if a team wanted to purchase, to buy a set of JOHAN GPS devices and software, how much would it cost? Well, I suggest that maybe, Kevin, you can introduce your email address in the chat box. So if they have any specific questions, they can address it, or even to introduce the website of JOHAN Sports to help us. So in the meanwhile, we have here a question from Sebastian. Do you use any relationship between external and internal load variables, such as mechanical efficiency, or do you prefer internal and external load demands separately?
Right now in our platform, we have them separately. And like I said, we also offer the opportunity to synchronize heart rate sensors with our GPS sensors. And we also have the opportunity to use questionnaires like session RPE based on the Borg scale. That is also an internal load measure, which is highly correlated with heart rate. Right now, our sports science department here at JOHAN Sports is looking into ways of combining them and developing reliable and valid measures to base your analysis on. and to give you information on the specific fitness state of the players. So right now we already have them separately available in the JOHAN Sports platform, but we are discussing of combining them. But they're always available for exports, so you can do your own shared analysis for your own goals at your club.
Okay, guys, Kevin, thank you very much for your time. Thank you for our audience also to being with us during these 30 minutes almost. I'm happy to see that we have some very happy clients. But either way, Kevin, thank you once again for your time. Thank you for our audience also. And I hope that I can see you all soon in another webinar from Soccer Hub. Kevin,
yes,
thank you very much. And
can I have one remark about
sure.
the question from Victor about the GPS devices?
Sure.
I send in the chat the website of JOHAN Sports,
Okay.
where you can find a link to a quote where you can contact us for the prizes and the packages we have at JOHAN Sports, or you can send an email to info@johansports.com, where you will be in contact with our people as well.
Okay, Kevin. Thank you very much once again. Guys, see you soon. Kevin, bye, and see you soon. Bye-bye.
Bye. Thank you.